believe as women, it's time for us to reclaim our power. And the way that we do that is stripping away a lot of this old shit that's living in our spiritual soup. This is the Nichole Joy Show. Welcome to my corner of the internet, where motherhood, business, and spirituality collide. I'm your host, Nichole Joy, mother of 3, corporate dropout turned energy healer, podcaster, mentor, and author of Walking Mom Home. If you've been listening for some time and are curious but not quite sure how energy healing will fit into your life or into your business, try me. There's a link in the show notes where you can apply to work with me, and let's chat. The way that you move through the world, the way that you interact with the world around you, whether that's your business, interfacing with clients, or in relationship, be it romantic relationship, friendships, family dynamics, the way that you interact with your children, and the way that you relate with everything around you is shaped by what you inherited. Not every way that you be as a person, as a woman, started with you. Not everything that you're carrying is because of this current lived experience. And much of it is based on what you have inherited in your spiritual soup. Now, the spiritual soup as a whole, based on my learnings and my understanding through my mentor years ago, our spiritual soup holds information from this current lifetime and experiences that we've had, information from other lifetimes, whether it's past lives, parallel lives, other experiences that our soul has had, and information from our lineage, both the mother line and the father's line. And so for the context of this conversation and the context of the work that I'm sharing at this point, we are going to focus on what you inherit from the women in your mother's line. And I also have to tell you that what you have inherited is not just shit. We don't only inherit trauma and bad things. We have inherited survival patterns. We inherit a template for how our nervous system operates, and we inherit our power from the women in our family. And sometimes the suppression thereof. And what we know, no matter how wonderful the women in our lineage were, generations and generations and generations back, women had less and less power, and that power was suppressed. And what happens is that suppression of power still lives in these bodies that we are in right now. So in this episode, I want to explain to you what I mean when I talk about motherline work and what comes through the lineage on the mother's side. And I also want to talk about why this work matters and why right now. So first, in very simplest terms, the lineage, the mother line, is all of the women that came through your mother's side, your mother, your grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-grand, and back and back and back. A lot of these women going back, they were living in survival mode. They were in relationships and marriages that oftentimes they couldn't get out of because they needed to survive. And what they carried emotionally, what their nervous system experienced, and the very often harsh conditions that they were living in is in the spiritual soup. It's important to note that doing this work on the motherline, it's not about mother wounding only. That is a portion, and I talk about that in my book because the book is my personal experience of the motherline. But it's not just that, and it's not about blaming our mothers. It's not about blaming our grandmothers or great-great-grandmothers. They all inherited shit too. The focus of doing this kind of work is becoming aware of what has moved through the lineage and healing it and shifting it so that we can live differently as women. So the way that I do this work and the way that I want to present it to you, and really the way that I teach, the way that I guide, is 3 phases. Phase 1 is awareness. Awareness is that recognition that the way that you're being as a woman in this moment, whether that's the way that you communicate and talk to your children, the way that you communicate with your partner, the way that you think about money, the way that you think about your rights and your power and what you can do as a woman, is in conflict with who you know that you're meant to be. So there's a disconnect. I've worked with women in this capacity for a very long time in private spaces. And it really was this like undertone of behind the scenes, private hush work that we were doing when at the surface level, we were working on their businesses. But as you know, if you're an entrepreneur and you're in heart-centered work, which my community tends to be, it's not just, we're not selling water bottles. We're doing deep shit. And when you go down this path, you tend to dig up your stuff. And so what often comes up is the way that I am reacting to my life and the things around me doesn't match who I want to be and who I believe that I'm here to be. And so this awareness is that moment where you realize that some of what you're carrying and the way that you're being didn't start with you. Now, phase 2 is the healing. It's the shifting. And my personal favorite tool for doing this work is expansion principle energy healing. That's the energy healing modality of which I've been using since 2019. There are lots of ways that you can do healing work. This particular modality, I love it because it goes back to the origin of whenever the experience occurred. And it shifts and heals the information that we're holding in our soup to the origin, be that 2 generations ago or 10 generations past in our mother line. And it doesn't change the past. It doesn't change history. What happened, happened, but it changes how it lived in that woman in the line. And then it passes through the line all the way forward and backward. Meaning, even if it was 10 generations back, the healing will pass down the line all the way to you and then beyond you and to your children. What I also really love about this work, and I share quite a bit about this in the book in my personal experience, is there's no need for re-traumatization. There's no need to go to therapy. Now, let me preface that with therapy is wonderful. I've had some great therapy experiences. I've had some not so great therapy experiences. I'm not knocking therapy. I'm not telling you not to go to therapy. What I'm saying is that the tool that I use, EP, short for expansion principle, does not require you to talk it out and relive every traumatizing experience, nor does it require you to know every single thing that the grandmothers and the women on your line experienced in order for you to shift and heal it. It's a very intelligent energy, and it honors sovereignty, and it knows exactly what is ready and available to shift at any given moment. And I think that's an important distinction because it's not one of those things that you snap your fingers, you do an energy healing session and it's all cleared and all done. It doesn't work that way. So we cannot shift and heal every single thing that lives in our soup or in our mother line in any given moment. Not everything is ready to shift at one given point in time. And so doing this work is something that's ongoing. I've been doing this work now since 2019, and I continued just yesterday. I had an experience that I'm not going to share right now, but perhaps I'll share it in the private Motherline, the virtual container that's opening March 23rd. But I'm still working on what I have inherited through my mother line. There's always deeper and deeper layers to go. I imagine healing is like an onion, right? And I think about Shrek, and the onion, and healing occurs in layers. And so you continue to peel off these layers when they're ready. I'm sure you've heard this before, but if you haven't, healing is not linear, meaning it's not just start to finish the end. This is something that we're constantly revisiting. Phase 3 is the embodiment phase. In this phase, you've taken what you became aware of, what you've been working on in healing and shifting, ideally with me using EP, and you begin embodying those changes. So you move through your life differently. You begin to have interactions, and you're just being a human being and living life. And living life is a spiritual practice. Engaging with your partner, engaging with your friends, engaging with clients, running business programs, earning money, managing money, the way that you interact with your body, what you think about your body, your inner dialogue, all of these things are our day-to-day actions and how we move through the world and how we interact with our world. And so embodiment is when you're practicing what you've been learning and what we've been working on. And what you begin noticing is that your nervous system feels different. You react differently. You're no longer perhaps in this high fight or flight nervous system with a very reactive response to everything your child does. And you may notice that you have a very different relationship with your power, that you feel much more comfortable and confident in your power and who you're here to be. Having said that, I'd like to share a couple of personal experiences because I'm a 1-3 in human design, and that's how I teach. I share through my personal stories. And one is in 2018 when I was in labor with my third, and I was at home in labor. I was not yet an energy healing practitioner. However, I had a close friendship with the woman who's now my mentor, and I asked her to do energy work on me while I was in labor. And one of the things that came up was trauma in my mother line from birth. And if you're in the birth world, or you're a mother, or you've given birth, or you know a lot of people who have given birth, you're probably aware that generations and generations back, birth was dangerous. Now, arguably in today's world, it's still quite dangerous for certain demographics because we have a lot of work to do. But for the sake of this conversation, we'll say that generations and generations back, there was a lot more birth trauma widespread among the collective of women. That is passed down through the mother line. And my life was a prime example of this. My mother had 4 C-sections out of her 5 births, and I carried everything that she held regarding her births in me. And as if you've been around long enough, you've heard me talk about my births. When it came time for my first, I just knew that I was going to have a C-section. And I began doing work when I was pregnant with my second. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was shifting some of that. And then by the time the third rolled around, I was ready for a full-on home birth, unassisted home birth, meaning there was no midwife. And while I was in labor, my mentor was working on me with EP and shifting things in my lineage. And ultimately, I had a precipitous birth. It was less than 3 hours at home, no drugs, on the bedroom floor. And if that's not a reclamation of power, I don't know what the fuck is. Okay, another example that I want to share, another personal story, is in 2019, why I started using EP. And I share about this quite a bit in the book as well. But for now, I will just say that I was reaching a season in my children's ages where some of them were no longer toddlers. And some of the personality shifts that I noticed when they were coming out of toddlerhood, I was responding in a very reactive, knee-jerk way. And I was noticing my knee-jerk reaction and how I wanted to respond. And it did not match with the kind of mom who I wanted to be. Now, motherhood felt loaded to me anyway for a lot of reasons. I share a lot in the book. It's coming out soon. And also, the program Motherline, you get access to the book pre-publication, FYI. So I became aware that the way that I was engaging with my children, there was a disconnect between that and the kind of mother who I wanted to be. And then I stepped into healing work. I was invited by my now mentor and friend to explore energy healing. I didn't know what the hell she was talking about, but I knew I was desperate. I knew there was a disconnect and I trusted her. So I moved into that healing phase. I'm still in that phase, by the way, because again, non-linear. And one of the things that I realized when I met her and I saw how she parented and I observed how she engaged with her children was that there was another way to do this, that the books I was reading was not reaching, because I read a bunch of books about conscious parenting and becoming a calm mom and all of those wonderful things. They were great in theory, but nothing was actually working for me. So I realized that what I needed wasn't just more information from a book. I needed a new operating system. I needed a new foundation within myself. And the way that I knew in my heart to get there was via energy healing work. And I trusted my friend. So I moved into that phase 2 with her. Now, phase 3 for me was the embodiment. So again, over this last 6.5 plus and ongoing years, I'm living day to day, embodying the layers that I've worked on and I continue to work on. And it shifted the kind of mother who I am. And listen, I'm not a perfect mom. This is not about becoming perfect. It's about being different. And I am a different mom because of the work that I'm doing. And I'm different every day. So why now? Why are we doing this work now? Why is this work important right now? If you look around the world, a lot of the world and the structures and the foundations that we have been existing in are crumbling and are dismantling. There's a lot of loss, there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of awful things happening in the world. And also, I believe to my core that things are crumbling because they don't work. And that's not where we are meant to be and how we're meant to be operating. And I feel, and I was sharing this the other day on a Zoom call with an intimate group of women, I feel like who we're being called to become as women is the guides, and we are leading. And really, I had an episode of, I want to say it was 2 years ago, where I was talking about how mothers carry the spiritual load for the family, and we guide the family's spirituality. No matter what your religion or beliefs are, it tends to be, now this is not everybody, right? But it tends to be the women that are carrying and guiding the family spiritually. And I believe we are moving into that in a bigger way as these old structures and foundations that are harmful to children, harmful to women, harmful to people are crumbling, because I don't believe that's how we're meant to engage and interact. I believe as women, it's time for us to reclaim our power. And the way that we do that is stripping away a lot of this old shit that's living in our spiritual soup. When we do this work, the ripple effect is incredible. And really, it's not just for us. I mean, it's worth it to do it just for you. But one of the things that always moves me forward when I'm trying to decide on making big changes in my personal life is what impact it will have on my children. And I know because I've seen the impact on my children. I've seen how powerful my children are. And I've seen the impact on their confidence, on the way that they view the world, on the way that they engage with me, on the way that they engage with others. And I've seen the proof that it's working. There's more about that in the book too. We as women are not here to have our power suppressed anymore. We need to be reclaiming our power. And it starts inside of our own bodies in our spiritual soup. We go to the origin. This is not a band-aid. This is healing to the root. A lot of people are getting on board these days with healing physical issues at the root and not band-aiding, right? So Western medicine is often associated with band-aids, right? And there are times that Western medicine is wonderful and helpful and very important. And also there are times when it's a band-aid. I've been a fan of healing to the root for a very long time, not just for my physical body, but for my spirit, my soul, for my energy. And in the context of this particular offering, this particular program, we're doing this work via the work on your motherhood lineage so that we change how we live as women and we change what comes forward with the next generation and our descendants. And it's not lost on me that I'm putting this work out into the world during Women's History Month and that I'm recording this episode a couple days before International Women's Day. Having said all of that, the Motherline program is how you do this work. And I'm facilitating an experience that kicks off March 23rd, running through May 1st. There's a virtual option. There's also an in-person retreat that I just rescheduled the dates for November. I initially was doing it a little bit sooner, but based on your feedback, I know a lot of you are birth doulas and mothers, and you need more time to do the childcare thing and do not accept births. I've moved the retreat to November. All of the details are at the link in the show notes. This is application only because I'm protecting the space of who's in both the Zoom calls with us and at the in-person retreat. Also note that the retreat is maxed out at 8 because it's a relatively small venue and I'd like to keep it intimate. Anybody coming to the virtual Motherline experience, you get a pre-publication copy of Walking Mom Home, my book, and that's coming out May 7th, but you'll get to access it early. It's not a curriculum. It's not a required reading. However, it is a living, breathing example of this work in my life and with my experience with my own mother. It's a memoir based on how my mother and I healed our relationship through doing work on the Motherline. If you'd like to talk about private support, I mentioned virtual and the retreat, but private support is also an option. So if you're somebody who doesn't really want to be chatting with others and you'd rather work with me one-on-one, the application link is also in the show notes, or reach out to me if you have any questions.